least start setting up the recording. Oh, I've got it, that it's set up.
It's working on it here.
I got a pop-up that it is now streaming.
Funny, it shows me it's working. Okay, live streamed.
At least start setting up the recording. Oh, I've got it, that it's set up.
Working on it here. Okay, out of that window, we're good to go.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order. Today is Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. We'll start with introductions. I'm Chris Darcy, Chair of the Commission.
Spencer Emmerich, Commissioner.
Rachel Bucci, Commissioner.
Michael Hernandez, Commissioner.
Kelly James, Commissioner.
And Heather Dimke with Public Works.
First on our agenda is public comments. And Heather, I'm going to let you report on this.
Yeah, no formal comments were received before this meeting. However, we were alerted to some comments yesterday. I think it was a gentleman from the SCAN Neighborhood Association shared a recent blog post regarding guidance of youth. So we can certainly add that to our discussion today. We had that as an action item and we should definitely discuss it as well prior.
All right, let's move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, today's agenda, and the minutes from our two sessions in October.
I move that we approve all of those.
Is there a second?
I have a question before we do that. I know in the minutes of the last meeting, it had information about our discussion of the sculpture at the convention center and the repairs that were needed there. After our meeting, I sent a follow-up email and I was just wondering if that email could be, or the information contained in that about the movement of the sculpture, the recommendation that it not be on wheels, and I'm trying to remember all of the information that was conveyed, but essentially that it would be unfortunate if this sculpture were to fall on somebody, and or just we don't want to encourage movement of art either on wheels or by maintenance personnel or construction personnel who are not experienced moving art. So is that possible?
Yes, I can certainly add details about that if that's desired.
It sounds like it would probably be a good idea, and certainly it would be captured in the minutes of this meeting because you just said it on the record today, Rachel.
Okay.
There, I received a copy of that email. I think the key points were that the piece not be put on a base with wheels to facilitate moving, and that moving should not be part of the ongoing plan for this sculpture, and that the work should only be moved by a professional art mover, not, let's just say, a carpet installer, which I think there was carpet installing going on at the convention center at that time. Okay, with that, is there a second to approve the consent agenda?
I second the consent agenda.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. Morning, Paula. And let's move into discussion items. First up is the Public Works Operations Building. And I hope that you all did some homework and brought some ideas to share. So, and Heather, thank you for sending the renderings of the exterior and then the lobby public space.
Mhm.
So who would like to to start, did anyone bring some examples of work that they think might, spark a conversation as SPAC moves into a conversation with other public works people around the selection of artwork?
I received some images from Michael yesterday, a great set of a good variety. And I can share those whenever we're ready. I can also share the latest renderings before we start again as well.
Let's start with the renderings and then let's look at Michael's images. I also pulled a series of images and I hope I can share my screen and do that. Otherwise, I'll quickly send them to you, Heather.
Okay.
I also have some images to share, and I have them queued up on my screen
Perfect. Thank you.
when we're ready.
Great. So it looks like, we've got a pretty spare looking exterior. I think it's quite striking. It looks like right now there might be, this looks like it's been planted maybe with native plants, things that might be drought resistant. And I will be sharing one image of a freestanding sculpture when I get to my set of images. I think it's quite a handsome, for the purpose of the building, a public works operations building, I think it's quite elegant. So it's a nice addition to the city.
Yeah, so 2 shots of the exterior. It does leave some question about, I know it was mentioned that there's some additional space, I think along 23rd. You don't really see that area from these first 2 drawings. This is more the actual entrance, but it kind of gives, I guess, a flavor. And then 2 of the interior lobby. And I guess it was noted, Alan, it's kind of visible in the drawing here, this red box. We're looking kind of at the doorway, this vestibule area. Apparently there's a wall along here. It does not look like it's too large. I don't have any dimensions, but that might offer some space as well. You're not able to see it in this picture, but that might be an option.
Okay, and then looking at this image, it looks like the wall that is in the middle top looks like there are 3 pendant lights coming down in front of it. Would that be another space? Yeah, right in there.
I would think so. In fact,
Yeah.
I think Michael had some ideas for lighting. That could be brilliant.
All right, well, let's start sharing some images.
Okay, Michael, should I share yours first?
Sure, no problem.
That. Okay, can everybody see that?
Oh, yeah.
So there's some hanging, and hopefully this is moving for you guys. So we had the large painting examples, April Waters. Those are very cool.
So yeah, if you want us, I can start with the top. I only had kind of 2 inputs here.
Yeah.
So first is just labeled exterior, interior. Exterior being the landscape in front there where there's just the lone tree. There's 2 actual beds in those drawings. One's, I guess they're both viewable from the waiting area or from the inside, those big windows, so it would be visible. So that seemed like a great space for a freestanding sculpture. My thoughts in general were kind of twofold. One was kinetic and or modern. My examples here are Troy Pillow, Seattle artist. So the first row of images pertains to the exterior, and they're just examples of his work. Mainly, I feel like the exterior, the building's pretty dark in color, cool materials. I felt like needed something that would be more inviting and welcoming for the entry, potentially adding some color. The idea of the Well, like the red sculpture there, just some bold, something that contrasts the color of the facade. Obviously, the one on the right is more for form, black on a black building. But the two there kind of remind me that the cube downtown, something that's more reflective, potentially is kinetic, meaning it can move. You could reposition it, not that you'd encourage it, but it could be. The one in the far left is truly like wind driven, some kinetic motion on a freestanding piece. I thought that was kind of cool to think about. And then below that, if you just scroll, yeah, so those are just one example of what I thought could be cool for the interior. Just like a school of fish, just something simple and clean, related to nature. I feel like, you know, this realm would appeal to a real broad audience. I thought of the birds at the library the whole time. I'm like, well, not going to suggest more birds, but fish are great. So this is an example again of the same artist's installation where it doesn't necessarily have to hang down too low. I think the ceiling height in there isn't that high, but here's just an example of something. And again, I thought, you know, they're white here, but they could be something just to think about that has some motion movement that I think would, again, have a broad appeal. So those, you know, a couple ways to go interior, exterior examples. And then the bottom row is just my attempt to, again, for a broad appeal, labeled landscape local, just citing April Waters. She's done, as you all probably have known and seen, some landscapes of the area that I feel like have a broad appeal. They're very beautiful, and she works in large scale. So if we were to look for something that's more representational of a local landscape, or, you know, that would be something I think, again, would have that kind of appeal. And, you know, would be a simpler execution to go after versus a freestanding sculpture or an installation like the fish. So that's all I had for today. I don't know if anyone has any other comments.
Just a couple comments. Another sculptor who, just riffing off your examples from Troy Pillow, another sculptor who could be appropriate for the front, if we go in that direction, would be Lee Kelly in Portland, who has some large scale pieces. They're not highly color rich, but he's got some brushed stainless pieces that are pretty elegant. So I want to just get his name in the, because I didn't pull any of his work, but and then with respect to a large painting, Hank Pander, who's also a Portland artist, painter, could be, he likes kind of disasters and first responder subject matter. So he has a large painting of the New Carissa when it was shipwrecked. He actually did several commissions for the state related to public safety. He did some drive-abouts with state police and fire marshal and things like that. And his website is very locked up. I couldn't pull the images of his work from his own site. He also has a large work at the Port of Portland that dates back from an earlier building they had, but they just moved to their new building. But these are great. I think that this is really fun to be able to share with the larger group. Let's go to Rachel's.
Okay. Hold on, let me make sure I'm on the right screen. I have a gazillion windows open. I think I am. And so when I pulled these images or art, I wasn't looking at specific artists because that's just too difficult. But I was thinking in more visual terms. So similar to what Michael was talking about as far as activating the space in the courtyard in front of the building where there's an opportunity to activate the built environment that people traveling, past the building, also coming into the building, the neighborhood, that kind of thing can enjoy. And also the artwork can be seen from inside the building, which is kind of cool. So anyhow, this person, I think this is actually an architecture firm that's based in Seattle. And so I think I can, sorry, I'm trying
This
to
is an
make,
interesting
oh, here we
concept,
go.
though. Oh, look at
Yeah.
that.
So it's called Blades of Grass, and it's near the Space Needle, the Seattle Center. And I think you can
Oh, look at
see,
that.
people can touch it. Obviously, I don't know what it's made of, but it's supposed to look like blades of some kind of grass. Anyhow, I thought that was kind of interesting because it's a screen. It's also just abstract as well.
Mhm.
I like
So
the example too, because it seems, sorry to interrupt,
go ahead.
that the wind, would
Mm.
play into them bowing gently or something. And then the kinetic part of it. I don't know why I was kind of stuck.
Yeah,
But
I thought that too, Michael, the kinetic, when you mentioned that. And part of what I was thinking was, public works, and you think of gears and all of the different machinery and mechanical aspects of what encompasses public works. And that would be kind of cool to reference that in a subtle way, without having like a sculpture that's made out of gears or something like that, but to have that kind of subtle reference. And excuse me. Also, I mean, going back to some of the images that you show, I think on the inside of the building, it looks like above the reception desk, right as you walk to the into the building. It looks like there's a big wall there that would be a great place for like a large painting or something like that, like you suggested, depicts Willamette Valley. And I like the ones that you showed of April Waters because it's like an aerial view sort of the quote service area for public works. And so maybe there's a way to interpret that either through a painting or some other thing. And I have another way, it's kind of a suggestion. Chris, you've talked a lot about terrazzo floors.
Mhm.
And so I just pulled some examples by an artist who is, she does a lot of that. So, but there are other artists that do it as well. So, but here's just some examples. And then maybe, it could be an interpretation of the watershed, or like Michael was suggesting, this idea of fish. And so, the river is very central to Salem, both the Willamette River and the Santiam River. And that's where we get our water. So it's literally the lifeblood, I guess, of our city. We wouldn't be here without the Santiam. So, and then this is also another kind of subtle reference to gears and molecules, anything that kind of makes up the world we live in, and also referencing that machinery aspect of public works. And maybe there's somewhere to have something that's hanging, as Michael suggested. This is an artist from San Francisco. I think he's based in San Francisco, but in any case, this is a piece that's installed at the airport in San Francisco that I thought was very cool. It looks like wood, but it's actually bronze.
Oh, wow.
And it's very trompe l'oeil and just kind of cool. So I think the building itself, is pretty contemporary and a little austere. So to introduce some elements that might warm the space would be nice. I like the idea of having something outside that has color in it, like I know I didn't show, well, the blades of grass, I guess, have some color, but the pieces that you showed, Michael, like the red, I think would look really fabulous against that dark exterior. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. And, the process is interesting because artists will surprise us with their suggestions and interpretations. So I'm not going to be on the committee, but I look forward to seeing what develops.
These are great. These are great ideas. I love the blades of grass. One thing that occurred to me as you were just talking, Rachel, is that there is a Melcats colored sculpture downtown across from the old JCPenney building. And some people have commented that site may not be ideal for that work. And it's likely to be, there's likely to be construction around there in the foreseeable future. It's possible that we could consider reciting the Melcats out at the Public Works building. That's something, that just, I'll just put it on the table. So
when I was looking and also looking at the plans and, looking at ideas and that kind of thing, I was thinking about, well, oh, great. This is another public building that we now have to place artwork that we don't have a place for currently. And so wondering about, the interior, I'm sure there are going to be some meeting rooms and some other places within this new space where it would be nice to have artwork. And so to be able to kind of stretch the budget, as it were, and include pieces that are already part of the public art collection would be nice. I love the idea of putting the Melcat somewhere where it can be better appreciated.
Mhm.
And maybe then that would open up an opportunity to do more with maybe like the flooring or some large scale piece that's really impactful there. If we can then draw in and augment that with existing pieces of the collection. So I agree. I think it's good to look at it really in a holistic way.
I like the idea of considering the Melcats. My only comment would be that I wonder if the scale isn't the best.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying it's small or it would be like way out of place to think that it would, but it does seem like it might be a little dwarfed there. I don't know why I keep thinking about that front little courtyard, that corner there, but there's a big tree. I'm sure maybe the tree could be in the other bed and then Melcats could sit there nicely. And maybe it could be landscape to help create more of a setting that would really enhance it. But yeah, it's almost like I wish it was a little bit bigger. But anyway, that's just another thought. But I do like the idea of reappropriating or placing some of the other public art pieces, because again, like Rachel says, I mean, they're sitting in storage and they're great pieces that are appropriate. That's a great idea. I like that.
Yeah.
It might be possible to lift the Melcats up a little bit too on some sort of pedestal, above the plantings so that it would have more of a presence. I like the idea of, envisioning that Melcats piece in front of this building as opposed to where it is on Liberty Street is, I think it would be lovely there.
Yeah.
Very,
And
a lot of
certainly,
distractions downtown.
well, plus that corner, with the closure of Nordstrom, the one hole that still is not, development hasn't occurred on it. And then you've got the vacant JCPenney building. What I think was seen originally as, anchored by the murals, you've got a Melcats, and then there was going to be a new building across the street that just hasn't played out. So, and I don't,
Yeah, I think regardless of whether this, idea of moving Melcats in front of this building, if it comes to anything or not, I think it would be good to reconsider where it's currently placed and see if we can find a better venue for it. Because like you said, it is very busy where it is. It's hard to really appreciate it. And there's going to be a lot of construction happening down there soon with the new Nordstrom redevelopment plans. So if it can be put somewhere where people can actually see it and appreciate it, I think that would be great.
okay. Shall I try to share my screen? I'm trying to get back to my main menu on the bottom. This might take me a minute. I should have pulled them up on my screen. You know what? I'm gonna send them to Heather.
Sounds good.
And does anyone else have anything that they're sharing that they can share while I'm dealing with this? Or any more comments?
I have a couple questions, and I have to apologize because I'm kind of coming to this late, but so is this art selection going to go through, a call to artists like we've done in the past? It's going to go through that whole process?
Yes, I would say likely.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of the budget and because of, I just think it's good to see what comes in.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a comment just in general about this. I think that it would be, I would like to see us engage perhaps with a Native artist. I know that in the past we've discussed this, and there aren't a lot of Native artists in our area who work in this scale and with outdoor sculpture. But if we can make sure to extend the call to the tribes, to Siletz, to Grand Ronde, and make sure that they can help spread the word to artists who they think might be appropriate. I know we've worked with Lillian Pitt in the past. She's with Warm Springs, and we recently did a project with her, but to let her know about this so that she can also spread the word. And that would be another reason to try to do some smaller scale within the building as part of the project, because that would provide an opportunity to engage with a Native artist who doesn't work in large scale outdoor sculpture or that kind of work. So
I like the idea. how does that work with the RFP process? So you make a good point, just making sure that we connect the dots, because you can't slant it toward it, the brief needing to be specifically Native American art or an artist. I just wanted to share, that's great that you mentioned that. I had coffee with David Harrelson from Grand Ron about 4 months ago, after the amphitheater had opened, and he had shared that they have some really cool ideas for some public art that they're trying to do, and it's not just in one city. And the idea was these cranes, like the bird cranes. They're these sculptural cranes that sit near different bodies of water, not necessarily always, but in nature. So that'd be great, because I could help connect the dots with David and just make sure that he has at least Grand Ron engaged opportunities with any artist, because he shared that they're looking for those opportunities.
Mhm.
That's
Heather,
great.
I sent you a number of images, and I'm glad you made your comments, Rachel and Michael, because the images that I sent are some commissions, public art commissions by Native artists from the Grand Ron tribe. They're quite stunning. One piece was just installed last week or last month, and but they're on their way to you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing yet.
Okay, and then I'm sending another piece. So while that's just in the email ether, there is the images that I'm sending are from two locations. One is the Oregon State Hospital in Salem, which had a very large public art budget. And there are a number of major commissions were done, including a series of pieces, both kind of low relief and one freestanding sculpture by the duo Tony Johnson and Adam McIsaac. And they did some carved panels that are round, that are wall mounted. And then there's one freestanding piece that facility has a number of outdoor courtyards that are out of public view. So patients, clients at the hospital can have fresh air time without leaving their confined areas of the building. So there are a number of people did different treatments there. And then there is another, and Tony Johnson, I think, is an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. So the other example that I'm sending is a piece that was installed in October in the Portland building in Portland. It was a Regional Arts and Culture Council commission. And it was done by an artist who I think lives in Grand Ronde. His name is Bobby Mercier. And it's a very elegant rectangular wall panel that's in an open space with an exposed staircase. As I thought about, kind of the public and public works, and as I read some of the comments that came in regarding Guardian of Youth, and as I looked at I read that cultural landscape report for Bush Park, which acknowledges that, there were Native peoples on that site long before there were any Western settlers, just made me think that we should be more purposeful in looking at artists who are underrepresented in the public collection.
Mhm.
And, we've got a large collection, it's diverse, but it's mainly by white people of a certain background. So that made me think of, what's going on. The Tony Johnson and Adam McIsaac team also did for the Port of Portland some wall panels, carved panels. There's actually a set of doors for a conference room, and then they designed the door hardware, which is very elegant as well. Did you get my email, Heather?
I'm not seeing them. I don't know if the file size was too large. Nothing has come through.
All right, I'm going to try sending one image just alone. You work for the city, though. You should have pretty good,
I can't remember what the size limits are.
okay.
I'm not seeing it.
All right, well, I'll send the doors first.
I was trying to think back. It seems like we reached out to the Regional Arts and Culture Council out of Portland, right? I think that was for the library, if not the police commission as well.
Right.
There's probably, I know you guys have shared other arts organizations that we could probably share the next I think it's a request for qualifications, RFQ, that we'll likely post for this next.
It would be, oh, I'm sorry, Heather.
No,
We might also make sure to mail the information to the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation in
Mhm.
Portland and ask them to distribute it to their artist list. Because they maintain a huge list of Native artists from
Mhm.
all over the country, but they could segment it to Northwest artists, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that both the rack, posting it up with rack reaches a very large audience and it's a diverse audience of artists. And then using For Culture in Seattle, that's another very robust, place to post. But I do think Native Arts and Cultures Foundation would, they're very collegial and, would definitely share the information.
Mhm.
I still don't have anything, Chris.
I don't know what to do. I've now sent it twice.
Are they from a website? I could pull it up.
I pulled everything from, no, I saved images that were pulled from all over. But let me see if I can pull up the Port of Portland site.
Yeah, if you have it open, you should be able to, if you can see the green share box.
Okay, hold on a minute. I should have sent these to you yesterday.
And I've not heard anymore. I think I shared, I reached out to engineering. They're hoping to start the selection committee meetings. He'd mentioned even next week, but I know folks need a heads up. I've not heard anymore. So it sounds like any day they're going to be trying to get those scheduled, and I offered to help. So I do hope that we'll hear soon. I know, especially as we move into the holidays, things get tight.
So that was an actual scheduled meeting that Paul and I would be part of.
You would be, yeah, nothing is scheduled yet.
Okay.
At least
Just
that I've
now, yeah, so I'm traveling out of state
Okay.
from the 17th, 18th, and 19th.
Okay.
And I have a photo shoot on the 15th, so that's part of the day. I'm not trying to be challenging, but I can be as
No.
flexible as possible. But just
Sure.
those are pretty set.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
The
I'll be
16th is
excited.
looking good. I don't know, Paula, but if we're trying to get something in before Thanksgiving, the 16th is a good date for me. And then after Thanksgiving, it's pretty wide open.
Nice. Okay.
The 16th is totally open on my calendar,
Great.
weirdly.
Well,
So
that's
might be a good day.
for two of us, yeah.
I'm not sure what to do at this point. I hate Comcast.
I could search too real quick. It's up to you.
Okay, try going to our Port of Portland. And the other problem is that the state redid the public art website of projects, and it's very slow and wonky. It took me, I spent hours doing this yesterday.
Mm.
But let me see if I can get,
Also, I mean, I know that this has come up a number of times before, but the pillars that were going to be installed near the bridge, working with Grand Ron, should we revisit that again and see if invite them to submit something for this project? I
Yeah,
wasn't part of the
definitely.
commission when that was all discussed, so I don't know the details and which artists were involved in the conversation for that and why it has stalled.
Well, I think there was never a budget. I spoke with someone from the tribe, just I had a happenstance meeting. And I think that there was never a budget for that. And so at first I thought that possibly there had been some conversation about a piece being gifted to the city, but I'm not sure, but that was actually the case. There is a contemporary Native art show opening at Salem Art Association this week. And the fellow whose name Michael mentioned, who has since been appointed to the Oregon Arts Commission, I think was involved with that, as was David Lewis, who formerly was the cultural resources person at Grand Ronde. So I'm very interested in seeing what that exhibition looks like. And that could inform, that could let us know more about some artists we may not have on our radar.
So I found PDX art. So there's some shots of the permanent collection. Is that what you were looking at up there? What I found.
See if you, it's not PDX, it's the Port of Portland. So that would be separate from the airport.
It says PDX art Port of Portland online.
Well, the airport is part of the port, but
Okay.
the port built a new office building, and that's where this art is. I may have to send it separately after this meeting. But I think, just in case my emails don't go through to you, Heather, I think that the idea of a sculpture out in front that would animate the space, I love that. Something with color against the dark exterior of the building. Something that would add some interest in that lobby area. A large painting that also occurred to me. When I looked at the renderings that Ricardo shared at the last meeting, it looked like they had dropped in a placeholder artwork that had some texture. So I also pulled some images of work by Anne Crumpacker, who is a Portland artist. She works in using slices of large scale bamboo. They're quite elegant, and I can share some of those. Let's see,
Is my screen visible? Should be.
yes. No, these are not the right images.
Okay.
This is some of these are from the airport.
Yeah.
And some are not. I haven't had, see that thing with the wooden ceiling? That's what the PDX is going to look like. My former husband's architecture firm is working on that project. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I did not receive. I don't know why your images.
I I don't know. We're going to have to, I'll have to resend them to you, Heather.
I'd be happy to, I can pass them along to everyone.
Okay.
We had some great ideas brought forth today. I have to say, I had thought, and I've not seen, I did a quick search myself. I guess it would be considered kinetic. I've seen sculptures that use rainwater or stormwater runoff
Oh, uh-huh.
in their design. And coming from stormwater, that's my background. I know how important that is. It just, the idea seemed very cool to me. I love the idea of movement in general, but just sharing that.
That's a great idea. And actually, I don't know what the, mechanical systems for this building look like, but it is possible that there could be something that would actually be part of a functioning system that, will this site plan have a bioswale or anything that water might drain into?
Yeah, I would assume it's required for new development, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, there could be something that would be incorporate plant material. Yeah, I meant to do a drive-by of the site yesterday and I just didn't get around to it, but this is going to be a good, it's going to be a big addition to that part of Salem.
Yeah.
And going back to Rachel's mentioning of the terrazzo floor, there is active water out there. I mean, this site is not far from this Sheldon ditch that's got a lot of history and Salem water systems. So you could do some interesting floor treatments, even an exterior work that incorporated something on the surface of the ground, with markings. Okay, well, I'm sorry, my images are lost somewhere in space. But I definitely would see this project going out with an RFQ, once some direction is set.
Mhm.
I will say that with an estimated 0.5% location or allocation of $140,000, it may be possible to not spend that full amount at this particular site. So this is not a project that's bonded. And Heather, I hope you'll correct me if I say anything that's not true. The 140, whatever the final allocation is, will be transferred into the public art fund. It is not something that is tied specifically to the library or the police stations, which were bond projects.
That's correct.
So it could be possible to, do something outside and something inside and have a balance available that could be put into something else. And I'll make a suggestion when we get to talking about the guidance of youth later on in the agenda. But are we ready to move on to, or let me just say, do you committee members feel that you've got enough to go forward and to start a conversation? And I'm assuming you'll be able to share some of these images with the selection committee at the first meeting. And I said to Heather that I would love to sit in, just be an observer at that first meeting.
And I can send links to you, Heather, or to the whole group so that if you are interested in sharing any of those that I shared, you have them to share.
I think we should share it
great.
all.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I feel comfortable going into it, looking at the space and starting a conversation for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, then let's move on to the Civic Center 50th year celebration.
Okay, yeah, so just a quick recap. Next August will mark the 50th year anniversary of City Hall. So the city manager's office and some others at staff at the city have been looking at options for a celebration next August. And so they had reached out to SPAC to ask about potential new artwork and what that might cost, where it might be situated. So on October 14th, the day after our last monthly meeting, we convened another public meeting and convened on City Hall campus and walked around. It was a great meeting to kind of get our feet out on the ground, looking at the site conditions and discuss ideas. And there was a lot of ideas raised during that meeting. I know the one idea that kind of rose to the top, and I have that in the minutes as well, was that the fountain, oh my goodness, the artist's name?
Hanson.
Hanson, I keep messing that one. So the Hanson sculpture has not been functioning for several years, and we're still awaiting an estimate of what it might cost to, again, bring water back to that sculpture in the middle of Peace Plaza. That would be wonderful. Of course, we don't know what that might cost, but in addition, there was a number of other ideas raised about maybe activating that plaza itself more frequently before the anniversary event with performances or other kinds of events on site. So a lot of ideas came out of that meeting.
Good evening. As the director and of the Newark Museum.
Sorry, I heard something.
Sorry, something popped up on my phone.
Is there like a working committee for the 50th anniversary?
There is a small committee. I'd heard from city manager's office. It included, I think, a couple staff from there, a couple staff from library, the historian. That's all I know. I think there might be a couple others, and I've not heard any more about that. So, yeah.
Because it seems like it would be good to have a committee. So I'm glad to hear that there is one. And so that the celebrations, obviously encompass more than just the art, but to make art integral. So can someone from the art commission be part of that 50th celebration committee and bring forward the art suggestions? And maybe, because some of the ideas that we talked about when we were walking through the space were ones that require some community involvement and maybe some other what's the word I'm looking for, other departments within the city to help sort of propel, maybe generate some momentum around some of these ideas. I thought. Of course, I'm not going to be on the committee, so I'm volunteering other people.
I think that would be fun. I need to reach back out. Like I said, I've not heard any more on where that's at or if they've even met again. I know that there was one meeting that the group got together kind of informally. Again, it was mostly staff kind of starting to brainstorm. So yeah, I need to reach back out. And I think if there was someone from this group that was interested, I don't see why not. I think that would be wonderful. I've been waiting. We have the minutes and they were approved today from that October 14th meeting. If you have any edits, let me know. But I had planned to send that on down to staff over there. I was kind of waiting. Maybe I should not any longer for that estimate of the sculpture, the fountain. Kept getting told that we should get that any day, and that was a couple weeks ago. So because I know they were interested in that and what that piece would cost as well.
And I'm wondering if maybe they could pull in somebody from the Salem Peace Foundation to be part of that committee, since the Peace Plaza is such a huge part of the Civic Center. And then perhaps there's somebody from Mission Mill and the Willamette Heritage Center who would also be interested, because they are the local history repository.
Right.
I also think it would be good to suggest that the Salem Multicultural Institute, producers of the World Beat Festival, be included. They've moved their office directly across the street from the firehouse. They're in that city-owned building by the Pringle Parkade. And, you know, when you think about some of the likely suspects, they don't necessarily represent the diversity of the city that Salem is
Right.
today. And Kathleen Fish is she is dialed into the multicultural community,
Mhm.
Even though she is not a person of color, but she would, you know, when you think about, for example, activating that Peace Plaza with live performance of music or dance, what have you, you know, your route to the groups who would be great are through an organization like World Beat.
Mhm.
I am going to send, following this meeting, an example of a work of art that was just commissioned by the Newark Museum in New Jersey, which is in a historic building. But they decided that they would activate their building through some backlit light projections from inside their windows. And as I was walking around the Civic Center in Salem and thinking about ways that, you know, you could activate that space sort of on a not giant budget basis, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to use the entire building as a sculpture through some bands of color that would be illuminated from within the building, but that could be seen by people literally driving by in a car or walking around. I just tried to pull up an image quickly on my phone and I can't get it, but I'll send it. It's very elegant. I don't know what they spent. We can probably find out. Sometimes these things, they don't look expensive, but they might be.
Yeah, so I will reach out after this meeting and see if there's any updates and share what we have, and I'll let folks know if there is a formal committee going, if there's set times that they're meeting, and I'll share these other groups that you've shared today that perhaps should be involved as well. And thank you, Chris, for sharing the older photos that you'd found of the original opening and the art viewing in the library and the Peace Plaza with the fountain. There's the one with the little boy in the water.
Mhm.
It's great to have those. I've saved those in our files.
Yeah,
Yeah, actually,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, that reminds me, I think you might have said in your email when you sent those around that the idea of doing a mayor's invitational this year. Did you say that? I can't remember. Anyhow.
I think it was Eileen.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how that would be accomplished. Is that something that we can engage OASF with, since they've been involved with that in the past? And since it was also integral to the original the Civic Center and then the establishment of the public art collection, and to do like a 50th anniversary version of that.
I think it would be interesting. So the first Mayor's Invitational was hung in the Anderson Room at the library.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the second one. Then when the Salem Convention Center was built, then called the Salem Conference Center, there were Mayor's Invitationals this was before there was an Oregon Artist Series Foundation. So I think it was the mayor, maybe Janet Taylor, who, you know, got together. I'm not sure how the idea bubbled up, but there was a volunteer staff. The woman who ran the Art About Agriculture program at Oregon State was brought in. There were some guest curators, like Cynthia Adams, I think, was a guest curator. Nancy Lindbergh was involved. But the walls of the convention center, which were completely bare. And the whole idea was that to find a way to kind of activate that space. Of course, now there's a permanent, there's a lot of that space is used. But when you think about, kind of like how to build community around something like this, there could be a show that happened in the World Beat Gallery. There could be a show at Salem Art Association. There could be a children's component of this that maybe happened through the Gilbert House or the Boys and Girls Club. There could be, I'm just trying to think of other spaces. There could be a piece of this that happened at Willamette or at Chemeketa. And, I do think having a conversation with the whatever planning group exists to put together kind of a shared vision would be a fun thing, and I think it would be a great way to build community across the city.
And also now the library has an exhibition space.
Yeah, exactly. And the Anderson Room is still, available space.
Yeah, and I think that it would be nice to do something at the library because that is a center of community and it is part of the civic center. I like the idea of engaging other groups to help curate that, whatever form it takes.
Yeah, and then figure out, is there any budget to make things happen? Because putting, anything that's invitational gets to be sort of political. So, and what is there a curatorial direction? You could have a very robust conversation, and you could also, I'm thinking about the library space. You could also kind of educate people in Salem about the history of the design of the Civic Center using artifacts from 1972. Like what was on that site before there was a building? How did the architect get selected? What were the key design threads that they were thinking about? But
yeah, when I was looking up information about the TASEM panels and searching old Statesman Journal and Capital Journal articles, there were several. So there were three different designs that were initially submitted for the Civic Center, and the first two were put aside for I think costs. Costs ballooned. I think the original estimate was around 6 million and it ended up being 7.5. And so there was a letter to the editor of the Statesman Journal, somebody not happy with the brutalist design and wanting to know how they got to that, because some of the earlier design renderings had shown locally quarried rock and other elements. And so essentially the architects responded to this question in the paper and talked about how the cast concrete, I think it's cast concrete that they use or poured, Spencer would know, that was essentially a cost driven decision, which I thought was interesting. But it would be fun to do architectural walking tours of that building, because I think people don't know the full history of how it came about. And then now there is interest in having it added to the National Register, and just the architectural vision of it as a flowing waterfall down that hill. I think it could be fun to do some public education around that. People would be interested. I don't know who's qualified to lead those tours.
Is there a model that still exists of it?
oh, that's a great question. I wonder. I would think that it would, if there is, it might be at Willamette Heritage Center.
Yeah, that'd be something that would be awesome to surround that with
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
as some sort of centerpiece.
Yeah,
And the drawings themselves, because the paper published some of the drawings, you know, the renderings, and then you can really see how what the architect's vision was in terms of it coming down to that pond, and which it's hard to get a view of that now because of, well, for lots of different reasons, but anyhow, just thought.
yeah, that's a great question, Spencer. I did get a response from Willamette Heritage Center about getting an appointment to look at the set of case drawings of the Civic Center. I'm trying to see if there is a drawing of the Wayne Taysom bronze panels for the doors. But I am hoping to get over there. And if anyone wants to join me, they gave me a few time slots. It sounds like, they just don't have a big staff or a physical plant for viewing things in the COVID days. But we'll see.
I would be interested in joining you
Okay, great. I'll send you the times that she
if
gave
I
me.
can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And them as well.
Okay, great. Great. Yeah, I'm curious. It just took a while for me to, loop back with them. Well, it sounds like we may have covered everything we're going to cover today about the Civic Center. We're going to talk more about that library gallery space and what the Library Foundation plans are at our December meeting. And it sounds like there are plenty of ideas about, how that the Civic Center could be activated and the anniversary celebrated. So with that, maybe we can move on to the Echo Earth Globe for just some updates. And that'll be our first one. Thank you, Heather, for sharing the Statesman Journal article that Cappy Lynn did. That was great. We heard from Carol Snyder at the Parks Foundation that as a result of that, they're already starting to get donations. She didn't talk about money, but I thought that was great. And she did make a presentation to City Council.
Right.
I wasn't able to listen in. So sounds like no commitment was made, but a conversation has started, and the Parks Foundation people, they seem comfortable reaching out to City Council people and speaking up. And I mean, there's a lot of positive energy there.
Yeah. Yeah, there really is. I think you're right. Carol gave a presentation to council. She did send a letter as well to the mayor and city council, just expressing the foundation's support for and proposal to raise up to 300,000 of the total estimate was 400,000. So they are asking the city to step in and cover those project administration costs, which were estimated about 80,000, as well as the fence removal, repair, replacement portion of that. So a little more than 100,000 is what is being asked of the city. So from what I understand, Budget Committee will start resuming as early as January. And so there is plans, Peter, Public Works plans to put that on the books, propose that we do indeed fund that 100,000. I'm not sure how that's going to roll. I think there are some members of council on that budget committee. So, and the council itself seems very supportive of the effort to repair the Eco Earth. So excited to see what happens next. And yeah, Carol and Foundation have just dove right in. Another just quick update. There was a video that I had not been aware of, a DVD that Mary Heintzman, the lead artist on that effort, had shared with us in one of our recent meetings. We did reach out to Michael Marquis is who produced that originally, and I've not seen it yet. It's a 30-minute kind of story of the Eco Earth. But they gave approval for us to digitize that and to share on our website, share with the foundation. So we're going to try to get that done within the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to try to get some information posted to our website as well, a separate dedicated page that provides some history and background on the Eco Earth, and then can link back to the foundation's information. So it feels good. It feels like we're off to a good start. Things are running.
Yeah, it's great. If anyone wants to make a donation in any amount to that, to the fund, please do. And, hopefully when this thing gets digitized and we've got some visual collateral to share with people, we can, push it out. A lot of people contributed at the start of it, and year-end giving season is upon us. So this is a good time to be ready to have some messaging. Yeah. All right, should we go to the Wayne Taysom panels?
Sounds good. And I don't really have an update on that. I know, Chris, you'd already mentioned that you'd been in touch with the Willamette Heritage. Rachel, you sent a couple articles. Thank you.
And I'm just very curious about the how this thing came to be. So I have a friend who's connected to the Benton County Historical Society, who also happens to be a member of the Mormon Church, as was Wayne Taysom. And so I reached out to her just saying, hey, did you know this fellow? And she replied to me within an hour, and she said, oh, I knew Wayne Taysom, I knew his wife, and I went to high school with one of his daughters. So she apparently she's going to reach out to the daughter and find out, what the family might have, and she'll report back. It looked like Wayne Taysom also did work at a Catholic church in Corvallis. I think it's St. Mary's Catholic Church. And it's not a building I know, but I thought the next time I'm in Corvallis, I'm going to go look around. He also had a piece there was a centennial exposition in 1959 to celebrate 100 years of statehood. It was in Portland, and Wayne Taysom had a piece there. So he obviously had a history. And then in one of the articles that Rachel shared, it looked like the panels were gifted to the city by a Mr. and Mrs. Howard Belton. And it turns out that Howard Clare Belton was the state treasurer of Oregon from 1960 to 65. He was a state senator, and they donated the panels in memory of a son, Arthur Leet Belton, who died in Chicago at age 36. I couldn't find an obituary. Anyway, it's, as we think about, all right, what are we going to do with these things? And what is the history? How did this guy of all people get selected? I mean, he would have been a contemporary, I guess, of Seneca's or some of those folks, but, I think it will be good to have whatever background we are able to collect as these are repositioned in an appropriate way.
Yes.
I will say, I saw a bad image of a very large bas relief that looks like it was made out of some kind of a composite material, and it's in a building at Oregon State. I'm also going to try to get a look at that. I've got to figure out where the building is. I'm not that familiar with that campus overall. Anyway, that's what I've got on that.
Yeah, so everything that we have is in our files, including those articles in the background, and it sounds like you might get more soon. So we'll add that. They are, just for the record, they are still sitting in storage on the first floor of Civic, kind of waiting for their new home. And I have reached out to engineering. They've not really started the design process for that entire first floor of Civic yet, but it does make sense that these pieces, if we can, might be incorporated somehow into that design. So kind of just sitting tight until I hear more. They know that of the interest. So that's kind of where those pieces stand right now.
Great. All right, let's talk about the drummer. So we touched on this a little bit earlier when Rachel, made some comments to get added into the record. The piece is, I haven't seen it, but it is in an unoccupied office at the convention center. I'm assuming probably on the floor, on a carpeted floor. And I happened to be in the building, because I went to take a picture of the Thompson painting. But the base that it was on is very, very flimsy. It certainly isn't suitable to bear the weight of a piece of that scale. And I guess figuring out, I think we need someone who is an art conservator, but someone who also has some structural or engineering background to be able to figure out what interior support system and attachments are going to be sufficient on what base to hold the drummer, which leans back, and then there's the chicken that is in front of the drummer. So there's two ideas came to me that we haven't necessarily talked about. And one is maybe if ARG is the city's conservator of record, the woman who came and looked at the Echo Earth Ball actually has her graduate, she is a conservator of things. We might have them take a look at it. And then Michael Hildy, who was part of the team that did Good Sense, the bottle bill sculpture, he fabricated that piece. He may also be someone who would have advice on this. But what other things should we get on the record as we move this forward?
Yeah, we had hoped to move forward on a loan agreement, renewing the loan agreement, and I think repairs. I had reached out, not knowing who could take a look at the piece, to Hallie Ford, Rachel, Jonathan Bucci recommended a Mr. Silas Cook, who did some recent repairs on some of the framed pieces that we have now in the library. So I did reach out to him just to see if he was interested. He's been out of the state and returns next week. He is interested in taking a look, and so I need to reach back out. He should be back next week. So I intended to reach back out to him, and I do have contact information still for Michael and Sarah Lynn Hild. So I could certainly reach out and see if that's something that he would have an interest in taking a look at, as well as ARG, if we think that hadn't occurred to me, but it does sound like that might be needed. So we had learned, I think it was shared, that it sounds like that piece was initially stationed outside. Mm-hmm. And so part of the reason, or the reason actually, that it fell, aside from that it was being moved, was that it was quite rusted through at the base there. So yeah, that's going to be a big piece to repair. So yeah, looking to reach out to these folks just to get an idea. I imagine it's going to be costly. And then when if we do update the loan agreement, I think it does make sense. I'll note in the minutes for this meeting, that makes great sense, that the concerns that we have over these loan pieces and how they're handled and managed. I think we should also draft an actual loan agreement this time, and we could include some of that detail in that as well. We really didn't have that from this last round. It was simply a letter stating this piece is going on this date. So we could certainly incorporate that level of detail in that agreement as well, but that would be for a future discussion.
I think that's a very good suggestion. And, I think if Silas is returning next week, I think we should start the conversation with him. And he certainly has, knowledge of others in the art world who, might weigh in on this issue. The piece, I guess it was appraised at about $17,000. That was a few years ago. And Mr. Hess is deceased. So it is the piece really is irreplaceable. So hopefully it can be, properly conserved. Any other thoughts on the drummer? All right, let's move on to the Rivers mural.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Is there any possibility that the convention center would be able to, since it is going to be sited there, would they have any ability to contribute to the engineering of whatever base is necessary to have it on view there?
I think we should have that conversation with them. I know the convention center, I know because they were literally shut down and had all of their employees were laid off except for like 3 people.
Mhm.
They had a really tough year for the last year and a half. There was a painting on loan from the Halley Ford that was damaged. And Jonathan, provided an estimate of what a conservator's fee would be to repair that. And OASF is splitting that with the convention center, knowing that they don't have a lot of discretionary funding right now. But I think it's just important for people to understand that, borrowing a work that's publicly owned that is damaged there's some responsibility of the borrower to take care of it or help repair any damage that happens accidentally.
Well, absolutely, for any damage that occurs on site. I mean, that they
Yeah.
should be covering that with their insurance through a loan agreement. But we don't have any way to determine whether the piece was already damaged. There was no, to my knowledge, there was no condition report when it was installed at the convention center. And so that's something that needs to happen whenever an artwork is placed in a location, is to document its condition when it's installed there so that you can determine how and when damage occurred.
I totally agree. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I never knew that the piece had once been outdoors at some location near the library. And I don't know where that location was.
Yeah, I didn't know it was at the library.
Stephen Adams knew that.
Okay, Jonathan seemed to think it was outside of Mary Lou Zeke's gallery also at some point. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think there was another piece. That was another Hess piece.
in any case, it was outside somewhere at some point.
Right. Stephen, he looked at it he's pretty objective, and he said there's rust on the inside, and it just gave way.
Yeah, I don't think it was intended necessarily to be outside.
Well, like I said, whatever original base it was on is not the base that was at the convention center. The base at the convention center is very, very rudimentary.
Lindsay.
And it's amazing that it even held the thing up.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't want to think about that.
Right. And so, I mean, this is an opportunity again, to fix it properly, and then, to get a loan agreement that has some teeth to it,
Mhm.
and then just set some rules. Like, this isn't a portable work.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is liability issues surrounding moving objects. So whether it's damage to the object or damage to the person who attempts to move it.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the Rivers mural. And for an update from Heather.
Yeah, just a quick update. I don't have a whole lot of information other than I did get a call from Christy Riddle, who's been kind of spearheading this idea of a mural on the Rivers condo downtown there across from Riverfront Park. And she is still moving forward with interest in doing so. And it sounds like had at least a fair chunk, most of the funds raised for what she's anticipating would be a large mural on that building. So she had called to check back in this last month, requested the application materials, which I provided. And then we were kind of back and forth. There were some questions about whether, I guess there's some 30 plus owners in that building. And so whether or not each owner would sign that application and easement that's still required or if that could be the HOA. And so we did some back and forth and with our legal as well. It sounds like the HOA could sign that agreement. They would be voting on that at one of their meetings before the application is submitted. So it sounded like she was hoping to get that in soon with the thought that there could potentially be, if approved, a mural painted next summer on that building. So she's hoping to get in. I think she was thinking maybe a public hearing in January, as soon as January. So yeah, that's still on the table and might be coming to this group soon.
Great. I mean, it's a very prominent wall, so I hope that I hope that we could have some conversation with them about their ideas before we get to vote to approve, like yes or no. I know that they are talking with the Main Street Association about, fiscal sponsorship, so they're mindful of, the fact that it's going to cost something.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, Heather, did you say that they have an artist in mind already?
Actually, she does, yes. And his name, I've got it here, Andy Eccleshall. He's out of Edmonds, Washington. The muralworks.com has some information on some of his recent pieces, if interested. She shared that with me. Apparently, he was going to reach out at some point with some questions as well, but I've not heard from him just yet.
So muralworks.com.
Correct.
Okay, I'll take a look at his site. All right, well, progress. And I know Spencer and I have been in touch about some early conversation maybe about a mural between the Y and the Statesman building.
And I don't think I've gotten back to you. Tim Sinatra is excited to meet with us. I think his availability is within the next couple of weeks, so
Great.
I might line up with Thanksgiving. So, but we'll get a meeting going.
Yeah, great. It's exciting to see the construction on the new Y, really moving forward.
Yeah, it's been a slow process, but
Yeah, but now I was stopped at that light the other day, and now it's really a building, not a hole,
yeah.
Yeah, so very cool. All right, let's move on to the annual report to council.
Yeah, just a quick update for the group. I've been working with Chris. Thank you. I did send the draft report, which we submit to council every year, is due by the end of the year. So I have that drafted, and Chris has provided some really good edits and feedback on that. So I think we have that report almost ready to go. And then as well, Chris intends we're going to do a presentation again this year to council. So that should be, I'm working on that. That should go to council either the 6th or the 13th of December. The only 2 days in December, I'm always right up to the wire, but the 6th or 13th of December, our annual report and a presentation will be presented to City Council of the highlights from this last year. And I'm happy to share that report out once we get that all finalized. I've got that into desktop. The last couple of years, they've started adding some of our images from this last year and really kind of dressing that report up. It turns out quite nice when they're done with it. So I will pass that on to the group.
Great. And thanks for doing all that work, Heather.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good to, it is good to get in front of council so that they know what's going on, and we can talk about what some of the challenges are and celebrate the successes, and and then there's good news on the Echo Earth Globe. So that's there's been good progress on things since the report a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Much progress.
All right. So the next thing on our agenda is, our agenda item reads formal accession of Guidance of Youth by Arvard Fairbanks to the public collection. But I think this is really a discussion item, not necessarily an action item. And I hope all of you had a chance to see the Salem on Bikes blog post that really talks about some of the issues surrounding historic monuments around the country that have been dealing with topics that are now not entirely positive. So let's just go back and say that there was some damage to guidance of youth in Bush Park. There were some blue lettering sprayed on the piece. I went over and took a look. Between the time that someone sent me a photograph and I live very close to Bush Park, the paint had been kind of wiped off in a not very, kind of smeared off, but there was still residue. And I have been just curious about how that piece happened to be in that rather not prominent site in the park. I've never figured that out. There was controversy around the original commissioning of the work, since a piece by Renoir had originally been approved and then withdrawn. Rachel's got some historic newspaper articles around that. But after our last meeting, when we started the conversation about this, I went back and read the cultural landscape report that had been completed for Bush Park, either in 2019 or 2020. And a cultural landscape report, really, they're quite formal. They're done by landscape architects and historians. They really look at the assets of a park, the purpose of the park. They assess the condition of the park, the plant material, historic elements, what other elements might be present in the park. And then they make recommendations for maintaining, enhancing, whatever to that property. So there are a number of references to public art. They talk about the fact that any public art for the place is going to be governed by a public process. There's a photograph of the piece that Salem Art Association commissioned outside of Bush Barn. But the two things that I wanted to kind of draw your attention to as we consider this, and then the involvement of artists who are underrepresented in our collection, is that there is a piece, I guess, as Salem Parks talked with the Grand Ronde tribe and others about Bush Park, there was a suggestion made to enhance the presence of Native ideas and history in that overall property. So there is a reference to creating an earth sculpture and or a native garden at U Park. And U Park is at the corner of 12th and Mission, adjacent to Mission Mill, or adjacent to Deepwood. There is a reference to the presence of the guidance of youth mentioned in the rhododendron hillside section, and that's an area of the park that's had a lot of restoration done. And then the piece that I think is most important is that the city consider adding a cultural timeline near the guidance of youth sculpture to reflect the presence of indigenous peoples on that land. So, we are on land that was occupied by Kalipuians and other native peoples. And I think that would be, I think that we should put that on the plan for SPAC in the coming year. We should initiate a conversation with the tribe and the parks folks about what that might look like. It could be a landscape architecture element, it could be plant material, it could be another work of art. The piece is, there's a confluence of pathways where the piece is cited now. But before we talk about that more, the final thing that they talked about in terms of art was just phasing out the art fair in the Upper Oak Grove and confining any future event used to paved surfaces. But I think that the message in this report, and it's buried like 125 pages into the report, is something that we should take seriously and, involve more people in a conversation about what this might look like and who should be involved and how it gets paid for and, but I would like to suggest that, as that conversation moves forward, that we consider the fact that there's a large budget for the Public Works Operations Building, and a portion of that could potentially be purposed in this direction, if that's what looks like it might make sense. That said, I would rather hold off any kind of formal action on guardian of youth until we can have a more robust discussion, but I'd like to open it up for conversation with all of you this morning.
I agree that we should hold off on any vote on accessioning the piece into the collection. I like the idea of interpreting the work more somehow, or putting it in context with other artwork. All of Salem is on Kalapuya land, but Bush Park is somewhat unique in that we still have all the natural features, many of which that were once there, including the one of the few native camas locations in Salem that still exists, and I think that it's a pretty special place. Anyway, I'm all for working on this in the next couple years with SPAC. And not immediately accessioning that piece until we can figure out a context for it.
I agree with Paula. And been spending a fair amount of time at Bush Park lately, and they have placards that talk about how that was the Bush property and how that became became a park. But again, like all over, there's no mention at all of the native presence that survived on that land. So I think it'd be good if we tried to address that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I read this whole report. I was really scanning for anything art related, but I want to go back. I'm sure that there's mention of the Camas Meadow in the lower portion of the park, which is, it's quite amazing when it's blooming. So, yeah. All right.
Can I just add also,
Yeah,
I also support revisiting this in a broader context. I have never seen the cultural landscape report, so I'm glad to hear that these things are all part of it and under consideration, the things that you mentioned, Chris. And it does seem that this is a larger conversation that might include the park SPRAB and the park's foundation, and then I guess now the what are they calling themselves? Mission Street Parks Foundation.
it's the Mission Street Conservancy.
Okay, that. So there are several, lots of, and others in the community who have an interest in how the park is used, how it's added to in terms of public art, and then the interpretation of the existing pieces. I do think it would be, it doesn't, I said this at our last meeting, I think, and possibly the one before that. The last time we discussed the sculpture, I don't think that it makes sense to accession it into the public art collection. There is a precedent for city-owned artworks that are not part of the public art collection that were gifted to the city, either from sister cities or through some other mechanism. So this piece sort of falls into that category. I think it wasn't, well, in any case, it has a very checkered past, and I think it's just not something that I think is representative of what we would like public art to be moving forward. That's not to say that, I mean, obviously it is there. So the larger question is, should it remain there? What becomes of it? And that's a huge conversation that's happening all over the country with regard to monuments like this. And so it's something that if the city, I would hope, is interested in engaging with that question, and the Arts Commission can serve as an advisor to that conversation, but it is a larger conversation that should involve more people throughout the city.
And the tribe. Yes, I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for sharing that, Rachel.
Okay, so I think we might be ready for any commissioner comments. I just have one. I was delivering that video, the Echo Earth Globe video, to Heather the other day, and she was at the library with Eileen and some others from the Library Foundation Board putting up the labels. They look really nice, clean, well-written. All the information was cross-checked and cross-referenced. So Paula and Rachel, thank you for being part of that team. I also joined that group without Rachel, who couldn't make it, for the presentation by Mayor Bennett of a volunteer award to that group for the work on getting all the works in the collection reinstalled. And I'll share some images. Hopefully my email will work. And he seemed to be in a good mood. They did the presentation in front of the Betty LeDuc piece, and the library really looks good. So thank you all for hours of work on that.
I'll just share too, while we were in there putting up the labels, I heard yet again, one of the librarians went out of his way and walked over and shared that the news, what he'd heard from people coming in, was positive about the artwork in particular.
Mhm.
That was what kept coming up, was the artwork, and how just how it's been curated, how it's more visible now, and the pieces are definitely tied to one another with thoughtfulness. So it was neat to hear.
Yeah, I think it's a great project in Salem, and I think Hacker did a beautiful job, and I hope that it gets some awards. There are library construction awards and there are architecture awards, and I think that this should, we've got a contender there. And I do think, if we can create some pride of place around the Peace Plaza and figuring out a solution for that, it'll be just good improvement moving forward. And then just one other thing, I would just encourage people to go over and see that show, this native art show. I cannot remember the official title, but it opens at Bush Barn tomorrow. The show is up starting tomorrow. There's an opening late in the day on Friday, but it sounds like it's going to be just interesting. And, everybody should just go take a look. What else? Anything for the good of the order? Once we get the date confirmed for the city council presentation, we'll circulate that. I'm assuming it'll be by Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that, sorry to miss that last week. I had a dentist appointment I could not get out of. I needed desperately. So anyhow, is there a separate something? That's what you're talking about? That was
Um,
just the photo, right?
That was photo, and I think Kathy took video as well. It was
Oh,
pretty
okay. Well, I'm
quick.
glad I wasn't.
It was pretty quick, but yeah, that was the idea, was she was piecing together video, and that will also be shared during the November 22nd council meeting. So, and those are right up front in the beginning. So I'll make a note that I remind folks to tune in and check out that video and some of the shots that were captured and the words that the mayor said, which was very nice. I think you missed that, Chris. You had to run out for a moment, but he said some very nice words. So
Good, good. Well, again, I think anytime we can have contact with these elected officials to remind them that art and culture are important in Salem, it's well worth it. So see what happens.
Mhm.
All right, is there anything else for the good of the order from anybody, any other commission members?
It does say recruitment update
yeah.
on the agenda.
Oh, I must have skipped that.
So
Yeah, I would like to share. So Eileen has stepped away. So Rachel, I think you have one more meeting. You're stepping away at the end of the year, correct? After your 2 terms.
yeah, I wasn't sure when that ends. So whenever it officially ends, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, end of the year is what I
I'll
was
stop
told.
showing up. Okay, so December I'll be here.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
So you'll be stepping away, and then Chris, I think your time, you were on the same schedule, so your time was up. Folks, are happy. We're gonna have 3 openings at that point. And I have been told that people can stay on, since that's the case for longer if you desire to do so. So keep that in mind. But the other piece I wanted to share, so we need some applications. We'll have 3 openings. The boards and commissions selection committee will meet December 3rd, I think is what it is, coming up quick. So city manager's office needs new applications by the end of November to prepare for that meeting. That's November 24th is the deadline. So we need new applications submitted by November 24th.
Great.
How many openings are there again?
There will be 3.
There's 3 openings, yeah.
So I'll take this moment then to do my now broken record plug for adding. I mean, it's kind of funny to say it when we're going to have 3 openings, but I do think it would be useful to have 2 more positions added so that are at large positions. And that, as we have all contributed a lot of volunteer time to this effort, and it would be, I think it would have 2 important purposes. One is to have broader engagement and involve people who are interested in public art who may not have a professional background in the field. And then secondly, to share the burden among a larger group of commission members and volunteers.
Thank you. Yes.
And I think I think that's a good idea. If I'm remembering correctly, I think Counselor Jackie Young, am I pronouncing her name correctly?
I think it's Leon.
She may have made a reference to, more art in her ward.
Mm-hmm.
And she's an Asian Pacific Islander background, but she may have some ideas of people, and Kathleen Fish may have some ideas of people as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can reach out to Kathleen this week and just say, hey, just a reminder, there are some openings, and if there are people in the World Beat community who have an interest in this,
Mm-hmm.
the deadline
I
is November 24th.
I definitely think that, obviously as a public arts commission, it is important to have people on the commission who do have a background in the field, so that, there are just some very technical things that that we've been working on that require some knowledge and expertise, but there are also opportunities for people who don't have that background to get involved. And I would love to see those opportunities available.
Yeah, agreed.
And then people can get experience. Not to go off on a whole tangent, but this is one of the major problems in the arts, and something that has long created the problem of a lack of diversity in the field is the barriers to entry, and for many different reasons. But one of the main reasons is that typically arts jobs, entry level, are not well paying. And so they self-select for people who either can be funded by their parents who are, or maybe independently wealthy or whatever. And so there are barriers to entry of getting into the field. And then that results in inequity and lack of diversity. It's changing, but historically that has been a problem in the arts. And so anyhow, just throwing that out there.
Very, very true.
If you have ideas of who else, it sounds like we will reach out to. Thank you, Chris. Let me know if you want me to the Multicultural Institute and let them know of our openings. I had wondered about the Salem Art Association, just letting them know if there's other local arts groups. Again, I think you've shared a couple of different ones in the past, and I can look back through my emails. But let me know. It would be wonderful to reach out to a more diverse group of folks that have the arts interest and background as well.
Okay, anything else to come before us? All right, well, thank you all. Covered a lot of ground this morning. Rachel?
I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this all in before my last meeting. One other thing, this is just a thought that I just had. Now that we're doing a lot of this by Zoom, I mean, probably in the future, we'll go back to in person, I hope. But the timing of the meetings, this has come up in the past from other public comment, I think, when we did that big, that, if you, and this again gets back to the equity thing, if you cannot meet in the middle of the day, then you may not apply to be part of this commission. So that is something to think about in terms of timing of meetings and when they take place. Mm-hmm. So we all are, privileged to have flexible schedules and jobs that enable us to take this time every month to be at the meeting. And so I'm thinking, if we ever wanted to have a youth position, which would be, I think, a wonderful addition to this group, but they're in school during the middle of the day. So that makes it difficult. Anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Thank you for bringing that up again. That's been in the back of my mind, as well as the interest in adding members. The former requires council approval, is my understanding, to increase the number of members and any changes to the requirements. But I think, and I need to double check, we could, and I know we've chatted about that, move this to an evening meeting if that worked for folks. I think that's something that we could just make that decision. So I will ask again about that. I don't know if we're still there just yet, but it's been back here. So yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, with that, is there any further discussion on anything this morning?
And I did
Alright.
have one more quick comment. I'm sorry. Thank you to all who filled out that DEI survey that was sent out to all the boards and commissions. There was some issues amongst all the different groups that we sent that out to, and getting that filled out with a Google spreadsheet or Google password. They've reopened it because of that. So it's still open, I think, until the 12th, the end of this week, November 12th, it now closes. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance before, I think it only takes about 5 minutes once you're in to get that done.
I did mine. It's very quick.
Okay.
All right. I guess we are ready to adjourn at 11:26 a.m. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody, and stay in touch.